this is our first attempt at a video podcast. We used to run a podcast called Rock and Recall, and it was just an audio, and it was on
TalkShoe.
TalkShoe. But now we're going to change over and use my YouTube source to put this up, and we'll have, I don't know how many of these we'll have, but we're just getting started, and if they take off, we'll have more. So what we talk about on the Rock and Recall was just about anything and everything. We talked about music since Sean and I was in a rock and roll band, and
you were in a band for years.
I played with
my dad's
for a long time. So that's the basis of Rock and Recall. But this one is just going to be whatever floats our boat, whatever we want to talk about. Maybe this is a refreshing thing because there's too many of these bad news podcasts, and I don't want to be bad news. I want entertainment. I want this to be entertaining.
I want it to be light.
Right.
So,
and even if we do cover something that's going to be of a more serious nature, I don't want it to be like, well, let's talk about terrible things in the news. Let's talk about things that are like on a human level that everyone can identify with.
Yes.
right.
Because everyone has good times, everyone has bad times.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, some of the things that you see on TV, you can't believe anyway. So this is just going to be entertaining. If you see anything and you watch it and you like what we're doing, and you have some things that you might want us to talk about, shoot us an email and
give us a like and also share.
Right.
So
now, the one thing that I'm going to lean on you about, John, is you are such a great storyteller, and I don't think I know anybody. Well, maybe a few people, but you have had so many interesting experiences, being where you worked, the jobs that you've had in your past, the people you have known, the places you have gone.
My Navy life.
There are probably some things that, like, well, I might have to change the names to protect the innocent.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you're a guy who's done everything from, I was in the Naval Reserve and actually had a meal with Danny Thomas in Milwaukee. Wow, that's a cool event right there.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure there's a lot of young people out there saying, Danny who?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just think of St. Jude's Hospital.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is I know Danny Thomas because back when I was a kid, Nickelodeon was a whole different channel, and there was a thing called Nick at Night.
Yeah.
And it was pretty much, I don't know what the channel is called now, but they played old TV shows.
Yeah. And people
Danny
thought
Thomas' show was Make Room for Daddy.
Yeah. Right.
And everyone in the industry, because at the time I used to work in an in-house advertising department. We got all the trade journals and stuff. When Nickelodeon decided it was going to do Nick at Night, and what they were going to do, they're going to show these old shows from the 60s on all the media experts said, who's going to watch that?
Right.
It went through the roof.
Right. Well, I watched it. I was a kid.
They resurrected shows that like the Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, the Addams Family,
and now there's
Danny Thomas
Antenna TV. In Florida, we used to watch one down there called Decades, and Decade had The Odd Couple with Tony Randall and Jack Klugman. And Adam 12, and all those are on there.
Yep.
And
they even had they had not only old cartoons, but they had English cartoons. They had Banana Boy or Banana Man or whatever it was. That was an English cartoon. Also
Danger Mouse.
Danger Mouse. So there was so Danny Thomas, I grew up knowing it just because of TV,
Well, here's another neat fact. There are YouTubers out there that actually go back and tell you about where these stars from these old TV shows are, how they're doing, and what happened to them, which I think is unique because you don't know,
right.
And the one that got me the most was the one about Leave It to Beaver, Eddie Haskell.
Yeah.
They went and told you how he was, and
Didn't he become a California Highway Patrol officer?
He did.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, the thing is I think what's really neat, hearing from stories, especially when Dad talks about stories, to think about, actors and stuff and famous people throughout history, like Al Capone and stuff like that, there was talk that once upon a time those men from Chicago used to come down to Barbie Hotel. Barbie Lake is like 45 minutes from here.
For those people who don't know, seeing this, we're right like smack dab in the middle of north central Indiana, and it sounds like flyover country, and I guess indeed it is. But there was places in Indiana where the old time mobsters and old time Hollywood people could. West Baden Springs. In fact, they recently restored that huge hotel down there with the big dome. The name of it, which escapes me, down in French Lick, Indiana. And the likes of Al Capone, Clark Gable, all these people would go there to stay there. They had the hot springs baths and everything like that, and it was a nice getaway for these people. And Wabash, Indiana was kind of like in the crossroads of a lot of the bank robbers from the Depression era.
Peru, the police department back in the day got robbed by, who was it? They stole the Browning automatic rifles and machine guns from the police station.
It was... It wasn't Dillinger's gang, was it?
Yeah, it was Dillinger's.
Because the story about John Dillinger is...
There's a restaurant called Dillinger.
That's right.
Downtown Peru.
The story goes that John Dillinger also stopped in Wabash, Indiana at a filling station that no longer exists. In fact, if you want to see where it's at, come to Wabash and look at the big marquee sign that's on the corner of Cass Street and Market Street at the Honeywell Center. There was a filling station there at one time.
Really?
Yes. Wow. And that was the filling station that he supposedly stopped at more than once, from what I understand, to get gas, because they robbed banks
all over
in Illinois and Kansas and Indiana. And
Dillinger even hid out in Macy, Indiana.
Yeah. I mean, so...
And Macy is just a blop.
We have...
It's a railroad town.
The
nickel plate used to run through there.
People where's Wabash, Indiana at? Well, at one time, a lot of people seem to think the same thing. Well, no one goes there, so that's where we'll hide out.
No kidding. But we're going to talk about stuff like that. We're going to talk about our childhood and the things that have changed so much. Kids can't do today like what we did then.
And in spite of the things we did, we all have all of our eyes, we all have our all fingers. Despite the fact that what happens when we put an M80 in this?
Here and there, but I broke my arm. We won't talk about that. How I did that.
Well,
that wasn't great.
Broken arm, broken leg. I hear you. So.
Well, Rex broke his arm twice. 3 times.
Yeah, and a leg.
That's our older brother.
Yeah, there's a picture in our family pictures of him sitting there with his arm in a cast and his leg in a cast. And
the stories you guys to tell, it sounded like he deserved every bit.
That's another thing.
We love you, Uncle Rex.
Maybe I should tell you who we are. This is my son, Sean, my oldest son.
Hello.
And this is my brother, Jay.
Hello.
So we're the 3 Bradleys.
Yeah.
So, and our luck.
Yeah, that's right.
The reason I call my channel Bradley Luck is because if it wasn't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all.
Oh, yeah.
So, whenever anybody in our family would say, "Why is this happening?" I would say, "Pull out your driver's license, look at the name, and there's your answer." And then John, when he launched his YouTube channel, he said, Bradley Luck. That's what I'm going to call it. I'm sure there's other people out there that say, hey, we could look at our driver's license and have the same story.
Exactly.
Well, then we have a lot in common, don't
there
we?
You go.
But no, I think John's right when he says, there's so many channels out there that's doom and gloom or talking about what the famous people are doing and the elites and all this kind of stuff. My wife is currently watching all these YouTube channels where they talk about Prince Harry and his wife and all the stuff that they're doing, and my personal feeling is I don't care.
No, that's it.
It's like, sorry, that doesn't affect me one way or the other.
I would rather talk about normal daily life stuff than it's about. I don't want to talk about people that's already well-to-do.
Right.
I mean, that's not the point of my channel. My channel is we want it to be down to earth, have fun, and that's what I've always wanted to do. I want to have fun.
Yeah.
And I got to hurry up because I'm 73.
Yeah, I hear that.
I'm coming around 50 here.
I'm within spitting distance of 70. I'm 68 and a half.
You're still a kid then.
I guess, I like what George Carlin said. He says, old people are just bent kids. Yep, there you go. And I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I hope that the stories we tell will strike a chord with people because they're common people's experiences. Everyone I talk to about the things that I did as a kid, some of the more pyrotechnic things of, hey, let's blow this thing up with firecrackers or set this on fire with lighter fluid. It's a wonder I'm not scarred. It's amazing. And my wife told me when my son was growing up, don't you dare tell him the things you did. And I said, I won't have to. No one told us. We were just sitting there like, hey, let's try this.
Oh, I got stories on pyrotechnics. I had two older cousins who were pretty much my brothers instead of really cousins, Todd and Scott.
Yeah.
Well, there was a time Todd came over and he had a bunch of fireworks. So, we had a bunch of, toy characters. What were they called? The Thundercats. They'd be worth money right now, but they're all been melted into nothing and blown up. So he had firecrackers. So what better way to destroy things by adding gasoline along with the firecrackers? So it was so cool when it exploded. There was a burst of flame.
That's what lighter fluid was good because you could have something on fire and you could take it and just squirt it. That was good.
So I didn't think the flame was big enough, so I took that. I don't know if Dad remembers. We had this weird looking shaped gas can. It was kind of tapered at the bottom and at the top, and it had a nozzle.
Right.
It came kind of like a funnel shape. Mm-hmm. Well, it was barely had any gas left in it, but I poured it over top of already burning Lionel or whoever he was, and the flame got into the can, and it was. It was like, ah! And I grabbed the fire extinguisher that used to hang right there by Mom's office to her beauty shop and take it and spray everything down. And I had to lie to Mom saying, well, we were horsing around the house, knocked it over, and it bursted everywhere, so we had to clean it up. I'm telling on myself, but but anyway, that's a little pyrotechnic story.
Hopefully the Mom statute of limitations has run out on that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, don't feel bad. The first time I ever cussed in front of my dad, I was 32 years old, and when I did it, I kind of went, and he just kind of looked at me and smiled. It's like, oh my God, I didn't get bashed.
Yeah, when is that magic age where you can actually cuss in front of your
mom? I tried to negotiate that with my dad. I got my first job, was it Kroger's?
Yes.
And, I looked at him very seriously and said, hey, I got a job at Kroger's, and, I think now that I actually have a job, I should be allowed to cuss.
Well, there's a certain amount of wisdom to that, because I think a few things in my life that have made me cuss as much as my job.
Working on cars is one. In fact, Kerry, my youngest son, his mom overheard him tell his friend when they were working on a car out here in the driveway. He told his friend, he says, now the first thing you have to do when you work on a car is learn how to cuss. That's what he told him.
Something I used to tell people when I was still at work, I'd say, because I had a reputation of, come on, Jay, tell us how you really feel. My mouth is a blunt instrument. I'm the first to admit that. But I would cuss, and I didn't care who was in the room. It could be the president of the company. It could be one of the ladies I work with. Who knows? But I'd say, look, The only thing I'm going to say in my defense is I am the son of a sign painter who was also a sailor, so I learned to cuss from the best. And and if you knew some of the things that my dad had to do in his job of being a sign man, anywhere from making neon to painting signs on vehicles, lettering on glass store windows, now, you name it.
Now that's something that we need to do.
Yeah.
You have those pictures of Dad's workshop.
Yeah.
We need to incorporate that into one of these podcasts and actually show people what our dad did.
Yeah.
Because it was really unique.
It was magical at times.
Okay.
It was absolutely magical.
What? Well, it's okay. I can edit this part of it out. So it's.
I'm going to show.
That's okay.
Picture of my goddamn so
Okay. All right.
We're just rattling anyway.
Okay.
Love you.
But
that's the beauty of this is when we record this, when we stop it, it goes to a file. I can get that file and drag it right to
the software.
Right.
Now we're talking shop here, so
yeah.
But no, yeah, the stories that we could tell about, working with Dad and the stuff that he did and the things that we learned from him.
The one job that I'll never ever forget is we were at home. It was on a Saturday night, I think, and what was it? Was that Burger King? Burger Chef.
No, it was a Sunday night.
It was a Sunday, okay.
And it was in the winter, and it was horrible weather.
Windy, so windy.
Our family would, like most families, Sunday evenings we would get together and we'd have pizza night. And we'd, make homemade pizzas and do whatever. And we just happened to be over there, John, and you and your wife and kids. And I was over there. In fact, I was living there at the time. I hadn't been married yet.
Wow.
And
Dad
Burger Chef called.
Yeah, and we were out in the kitchen, and I heard Dad on the phone saying, "Well, I don't know. I'm going to have to take a look at it."
Yeah.
So
he comes in.
He comes in and says, "Guys, go get bundled up. We got to go over to Burger Chef."
He said, "The sign's going to fall down." I go, "What?" Because that sign was huge.
Yeah. So I remember it.
Yeah.
It used to be right there where Hardee's used to be.
You remember what those signs looked like? It was more or less a rectangular shaped main part of the sign, and it had like a angular arch type thing to the top. And in the center of that arch, hanging suspended, was a round or oval sign, I can't remember, and it had the Burger Chef character. And the sign was oriented to where it was facing north and south, and we were getting north wind, and the arch had broken loose on the north side of it, and it was leaning sometimes at about a 30-degree angle.
But it was getting worse as it blew.
And it was just hanging. And Dad actually had to run you up, John, in the bosun's chair, and I was holding onto a rope to
keep you from... He was flying me like a kite.
Yeah, I mean, it was
like that back in the day?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. that right there.
Okay, I'll show the... Well, here's one they had. But that was that it then?
It was very similar to that, but I didn't have the Burger Chef. Yeah, I didn't have the guy at the very top. It just had the thing that said Burger King in it, or Burger Chef. And
this one right here. It's on this shirt here.
We had to anchor the sign to the truck and leave the truck there all night.
No, wait a minute. You're leaving the best part out. So we get over there, we get the boom up, we get the bosun chair out. You guys, you're down there flying me, like that.
Just like that.
He was flying me.
I'll show our
you're gonna have to tilt it. Right there.
That's kind of
that angular arch at the top was what was hanging by a thread.
So anyway, we get the boom up. They get me in the chair. Dad is cranking me up, and this guy, the manager, the assistant manager, I think it was, came out and was standing right under the sign where I was leaning, and he goes, "Well, do you think you can get it?" And Dad said, "If you don't get your ass out of the way, you might be killed."
He was standing under it. If it would have broken loose,
and it was going like this.
Right.
So what I had to do is Dad got me up there, and Jay had to actually pull me back because I was like a kite.
The wind was coming from
and
the
I
north.
had to lasso the top.
Oh my Lord!
And then Jay had to let me out, so I get the other rope from where it was over.
Yeah.
And then when I got that rope, then he pulled me back like this, and Dad swung me back to the boom.
Right.
And we tied that off to the boom.
Right.
And we left the thing.
And we had to leave it like that.
Right.
So when we went back, The only thing that was holding that sign up is it was a hollow arch.
Right.
And it was let over about that much pipe on both sides.
Oh, my Lord.
And it was sheet metal to the other one.
Oh, my Lord.
That was it.
It was basically 2 L brackets made out of sheet metal that was screwed to the sign, screwed to the bottom sign, and that was all it was holding.
And there was no...
The others, the screws had just popped out.
Yeah.
Oh, my Lord.
And it was going to go.
Yeah, right. Oh,
and so, I'll never forget, I went over there with Dad when he took the bill over. And when he gave the bill to the manager, the assistant, the district manager was there.
Right.
And when Dad handed him the bill, he looked at the bill and he said, well, this is too much. You charged us for leaving your truck. And Dad said, you're right. I charge you for holding up my truck. Mm-hmm. You're going to pay for what we did. And he said, well, we're not going to pay that. And that district manager says, oh, yes, you are. He says, that's better than a lawsuit from somebody getting killed.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Or having it land on their car.
Yeah, right.
You know.
So they paid it. Mm-hmm. But that manager was pissed when the district manager says, oh, yes, you'll pay it.
Wow.
But that's just one example of stupidity. I couldn't believe it when that guy was standing there. Well, you think you can get it? And Dad just, unbelievable, yeah.
Yeah, the things that we had to do. My wife and I like to watch this guy on YouTube. It's called Pepe's Towing.
Yeah.
And it's a big rotator crane. And I can identify with a lot of the things they do because, we did a lot of light crane work and things of that nature when we were in the sign business with my dad. And, some of the things you find yourself doing that were actually, you think back on it and say, that was pretty dang hairy.
Yeah.
And it's like, OSHA would have a field day with this kind of stuff now, but it's like, hey, there is no way around it. In order for us to get that sign secured, somebody had to go up in a bosun's chair because you couldn't put a ladder up against it.
Yeah, right, yeah.
It had to go up in a bosun's chair.
That wasn't the only time I was in a bosun chair. I've been in that bosun chair quite a few times.
Oh, yeah. And we had the safety harnesses and everything like that you wore, and at times we'd have to wear a hard hat because of the things we were doing. The last time I can remember wearing a hard hat was we were actually putting up a sign on an old limestone building, and the reason we wore the hard hats is because pigeons kept flying off the top of that roof, and little pieces of limestone would come off with them.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And that was loads of fun.
Oh, yeah. You were literally a shooting.
We got to tell this story. We got to tell you this story.
Okay.
Dad had a job of repainting a motel sign in Marion. It was too big to take it down and bring it back to the shop. So we were scraping it down and repainting it on site.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Well, we went over to scrape it, and the day we decided to go, it was so cold and windy. So Dad had recruited a guy that we all knew, Cliff Strickler.
Oh.
And
yes,
he said, okay, I'll go.
Cliff. Yeah.
So we go over there, and Cliff is wearing one of these great big long army coats. And he was wearing a full face motorcycle helmet.
Because it was keeping him warm.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And he was up on a ladder at the top of the sign scraping the paint.
Right.
And we're in Marion.
Mm-hmm.
That's 35 miles from Wabash.
Right.
This car pulls up along the other side of the street, and the guy rolls down the window and goes, "Hey, Cliff!" And Cliff looked down at Dad and says, "Who was that?" And Dad says, "No, the question is, how in the hell did he know who you were?"
Oh, man. Maybe he dressed up like that all the time.
No, but Cliff was a great guy.
Yeah.
A wonderful guy. The first time I ever had any knowledge of him growing up is he worked at a local filling station, the city service. And this place was ahead of its time because now you have convenience stores and a filling station. Guthrie's, Citco, well, it used to be city service years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They actually had, you could go in there, you could buy, bread, milk, you would buy all that kind of stuff there. And at one time there was even a restaurant attached to it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A donut shop then.
Yeah.
It went from restaurant to a donut shop.
Yeah.
I used to stop in and buy donuts.
Right.
But,
well, I just remember Guthrie's as a kid. That was about it.
He worked there, and he was one of those kind of guys that if you were casting a movie and you wanted a guy to be the mafia's henchman,
right.
You want for me to break his legs, boss? Cliff would have fit the bill.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was a big
guy,
scary-looking guy if you didn't know him, but he was really just a really nice guy. But he didn't put up with anything out of anybody. You know, the story I think was great was he was in there in this place and he was working, and they had one of those old adding machine type cash registers. You pull the lever.
Oh yeah.
And he's in there, and some guy came in there, and that was back in the days when you could pump your own gas. I was in there
getting gas.
Right.
You could pump your own gas.
It was raining.
And there was a guy who said he was, you know...
He came in a suit with one of those real nice trench coats. Mm-hmm. Cliff had all these people lined up because it was Friday night.
Yeah.
And he was doing that, and it was pouring down rain, and I had just gotten gas, and I went ahead and pumped my own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I just went in to pay for it.
Right.
Well, this guy pulls up in the Cadillac, and he runs in there, and he's standing there, and he's like this, with his hands on his hips. And he didn't say anything at first, and pretty soon, Cliff kind of looked up at him, and the guy goes, "I'm in a hurry." And Cliff went, "Well, I'm not." And that was the end of the conversation. That guy just went, "Okay."
Because he had the voice that went with it.
And he talked through his teeth. "Well, I'm not." Just like that. And that was the end of that.
Wow. Chuck Norris would have said, "Okay."
Yeah. But what was really funny about Guthrie's down there, you had Cliff, but then you had this other guy, Fred Kersey.
Oh, Fred Kersey with his Harley.
He looked like one of those muscle men.
Right, he was that big black. He was a big guy, the black hair.
Yeah,
that was.
I remember back. I vaguely remember
had
him.
A beautiful Harley. Yeah. Oh man, that was
and
a gorgeous bike.
Him and Cliff.
Yeah.
Would always argue about stuff.
Right.
And it was for fun.
Right.
I always thought they were mad at each other. Dad says, "No, they just do that because they're just messing around."
Right.
And I went down there that one day, and Cliff was late getting there, and because Fred was working, and Cliff was supposed to come and take his place, and Cliff finally gets there, and he stood there and looked at him and says, "Well, I'm glad to see you finally made it." And Cliff goes, "Well, I'm sorry. I just got tied up doing this and that." He goes, "You know what I should do, but I won't." He says, "I should take you out there in the parking lot and bounce your ass all over it." And he just walked out. Mm-hmm. And I kind of got me because I didn't know what they were doing. I told Dad about that. Fred doing that to Dad, to Cliff, and Dad goes, "They do that all the time." And Guthrie, he would be down there when they were there doing that, and Guthrie says, "Are you guys going to start this again?"
Now, the neat thing about that filling station, we're old enough that we span generations.
Right.
It used to be run by a guy named Lou Baldwin, and he was one of those. He was an old guy even when I
wore the uniform.
Wore the city service uniform. He wore the officer style hat.
Oh wow!
I mean, all that kind of stuff.
Back in the day, wow.
And he sat behind this big desk.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's where he held court, so to speak.
Right.
And these guys worked for him.
And he sold penny candy.
I remember the candy.
And you go in there.
I remember the old cabinet.
You
get the
beveled.
You would get the candy out, and you take it over to his desk, and he'd count it out. And if you got like so many, he'd give you one. So just take that, Because if you didn't have enough money to cover that, just take that.
See, we would walk past that place on our way to and from elementary school. Century Elementary was just down the street from the place. And, we'd go in there, and that's back when you could buy a pack of Wrigley's gum for 5 cents.
Penny candy.
Bazooka bubble gum was a penny.
Right.
And all these other things.
All kinds of candy. They had these little things that was some kind of taffy that was wrapped up in the yellow and pink.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you get those for a penny. Or 2 for a penny.
Yeah, right.
And for 5 cents, you could buy the great big long strips of taffy that was in basically a wax paper wrapper.
Yeah.
To make you feel older, when we were starting to go to the middle school, Mark and I, we would stop at Guthrie's and get those Fireball hot candies.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we'd eat those during the winter because they would help give us warm. Yeah.
Well, it makes me nostalgic talking about all this stuff because there were so many things that we would buy, and they don't even have it anymore.
No.
Right. Powerhouse candy bars, they're gone.
Right.
Slow Pokes and Black Cow suckers.
Right.
I think they still make them, but they don't have the paper stick in them anymore because it was a choking hazard.
Yeah.
And those things were great because they would last all day.
Right. Oh yeah, that's
And the neat thing about that was, it was almost every kid from the Century School would stop there.
Oh yeah.
And Lou was just tickled to death to see him.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
He talked to us, and it was really. And his daughter was my history teacher in junior high.
Oh wow.
Mrs. Baldwin.
Mm-hmm.
She never got married, but she was so ugly, no wonder she didn't get married.
She looked like Lou.
Yeah, she did. She was,
bless her heart.
yeah.
As I recall, though, everyone loved her.
She was a great
just
teacher.
A nice,
Right.
you know, back when teachers actually were teachers.
Yeah, she was a good teacher. Yeah.
But no, that was.
Yeah, kids these days. I mean, even my generation. I'm Gen X, so you know, I think we're the. Maybe Destiny is to the level she could still share stories like you know, you and myself. You know, we went to school in 6 feet of snow. You know, uphill both ways.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I think Reagan and Destiny can still play that role a little bit. But
They never closed the schools when we was in school.
oh no. If Wabash closed, because it was city. If it closed, it was bad.
I can think of only one time when I was a kid that school was delayed
Right.
when I was in high school.
Right.
And this was before I had a car. I had just gotten into, I was in 10th grade, because it was 10th, 11th, 12th. I hadn't got a car yet, so I still walked to school.
Yeah.
And that's something that, like, you walked to school?
Yeah.
You didn't ride the bus? No,
No,
I
we
lived
didn't have a bus.
within walking distance. The only
Right.
people that got the bus was the kids that lived on the south side.
I
that would
used to
come
walk
Wabash.
from Gillen Avenue all the way downtown to the old junior high,
Yeah.
Which is close.
and I'd go home for dinner and go back.
Yeah, you know,
right.
and
that's like what, 10 blocks? 8?
Yeah.
and we would
That's about how
walk
far
that,
it was
but
from here to high school for me.
I walked to school and there was hardly anybody there, and they announced that school was being delayed for 2 hours because of the weather. And I'm thinking, well, I got here.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I walked here, freezing to death, but I got here.
Oh, yeah.
So
I don't know
we
how
just
many
hung out sat in the bleachers in the gym. A few people there were talking. Some guys were shooting baskets and stuff like that.
Right.
That's the only time I can really remember.
Right.
I can remember wearing my coat in classes at the high school. It was so cold.
Really?
Yeah, that old.
We didn't have no heat.
Oh, the heat in that place was terrible.
The old high school?
The old
Yes.
high school.
Wow.
They had the
Did
old
you guys,
style.
did either one of you go to the high school that is now?
The junior high?
The high school.
Yeah.
This high school over here, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You guys went to
See,
that one.
the junior high used to be down
Downtown.
by the Carnegie Library.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Then I was the last class in that and the first class in the new junior high.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Did not know that. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Which pissed me off.
Right.
Because I was an 8th grader, and if it wouldn't have been for that, I would have been in high school the next year. But no, they moved it to
Back to junior high.
junior high.
Yeah, instead of 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th here, they went to 10, 11, and 12.
And I said,
don't know
I
what
was
it is
so
now.
mad because I wasn't a freshman.
Right.
Well, what
They said, well,
got
you're
me-
still a freshman. Now we're not. We're ninth graders.
Well, and that was the thing. When I was in junior high, 9th grade, which would have been freshman anywhere else, was in junior high.
Yeah.
And they actually kind of bristled, the school did, if you referred to yourself as freshman, or as they said,
Right.
frosh, for whatever
So
reason.
you were.
No,
Well,
you're only
in
ninth
ninth
grade. You're not in high school.
Well, see, they moved it back in my generation, so it was ninth. I was in high school at 9th grade,
Well-
so I was a freshman. So
So it's
Well,
just
that's because I had too many complaints.
yeah, right, maybe.
well,
Who knows?
these are all things, and every place is different. I mean,
Oh,
some
yeah.
places, ninth grade was always in high school.
You want to hear something sad though?
But
When I was really looking to be a senior,
yeah,
because when I was growing up, if you were a senior, you wore senior cords.
Oh yeah.
And I was, oh, this is going to be so cool. They didn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
There was only one person that wore senior cords.
yeah.
You never guess who it was. Dave Wampler.
Oh yeah.
He was the only one who had
They were
senior
a
cords.
kind of a pale yellow corduroy.
Yeah.
Right.
And they would paint them up with all kinds of things on there with fabric paint. Because I remember Rex had them.
Yeah,
Right.
Rex had him.
My oldest brother.
My Aunt Nancy had him.
Yeah, it was a gone thing.
Yeah.
As a kid, I looked at it because, Rex was a good 8 years older than me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, well, what is this all about?
I thought it was cool
Yeah.
because I wasn't that far behind Rex.
Right. Yeah.
And I was really looking forward. And then by the time I got there, they didn't do it anymore. In fact, I even asked, well, when do we start wearing senior cords? Oh, we don't do that anymore. It's like, what?
Yeah,
what do you mean?
Who decided that? Was it the seniors decided that?
Right.
I don't think so.
No. Was there a committee that I didn't
And
know
they
about?
used, I could remember when Rex got his senior cords, we went to the store downtown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It used to be Beitman and
Beitman and Wolf.
And they had all kinds. They had skirts and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
So they could get them.
It was a big deal.
It was a
really
big deal.
Wow.
It was a big. It was just the junior or the elementary school equivalent of that was when you got into 5th grade. You had flutophones, recorder types of horns that everyone had to have one of those. And you'd go down to Reinfeld's music store.
Get them.
Wavy-haired German gentleman, still had the thick accent. And I remember going down there to buy the flutophone and getting a little vinyl plastic case.
I didn't get that. I was out of that.
You were kind of in between that. Yeah,
I was out of that. But I was really looking forward to the senior chords, and it just
So I don't know if they do any of that kind of stuff. I don't know if they do the flutophones or anything. I don't know.
The only thing as far as Wabash goes,
Jeff never did that.
The seniors would paint the
ticket booth.
The ticket booth. That's
but they've done that for years.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that's the only thing I can recall that we did as high school.
And when they wore those cords, they had a cord day.
Yeah.
That everybody was supposed to wear their cords.
Right.
Didn't they even have where they'd vote on the best skirt, the best pants?
Right.
Wow.
Right. Then they had a dance.
Oh yeah, that's right. They did do that. But there again, like I said, I was so young that it was way over my head on that kind of stuff.
I was so disappointed. I really was.
I'm really hoping that it doesn't happen in my lifetime that they ever decide to tear down that old brick ticket booth at the football field, because that's been there my entire life. And then before that,
it was when I was in
every
school.
Graduating class gets to paint their motif or whatever they want.
There's probably
and some of them have been
6
really
inches of paint.
I'm sure.
They could probably tear the building down and it would still be standing. Who knows how thick
take the stuff from the inside.
You can't even really
start
hardly
tearing
see
it down from the inside.
You can't really see the brick texture.
Do they still use it as a ticket booth?
Yeah.
Do they?
Oh yeah.
We went. We had a young man that used to be my youth kid in our church, and he is now graduating, but he's in high school football, and he played in Wabash. So, but he was from Rochester. But we went and watched the Wabash Rochester game, and I can't recall who won. Think of it. I don't think it was Wabash, and I don't mean to be hard, but Wabash was never really good in football.
Never was.
No, it was when I was in high school.
Right.
Because when I was a sophomore up to senior, they won the title 3 years in a row.
Oh, wow.
Let's see.
Wow.
But
that's when Bill Cantrell was on the team, and that Fisher boy, and they were tough.
Right.
But in every time since I had been like in junior high and when I was in high school, it was like they just maybe win one game, maybe.
Right.
Well,
and I don't know really what story was, because when it came to track and field, Wabash has done awesome.
And baseball.
And baseball, they've always been good at that. Football and basketball, not so much. I don't know.
So when I was, that would have been 66, 67, and 68. Those 3 years, they were tough.
But
that's been a long time.
I hated pep sessions, because at that time the high school gym was it was basically the size of a basketball court with bleachers just on one side
of the room.
And they would have the entire
school
in there, and the entire school band, not just the whole band blaring directly at the bleachers. And I would get such a headache that I would literally almost be sick to my stomach. I hated going to those things.
See, I didn't.
And so finally, someone said, "Well, if you don't like going to them, why don't you just go to the art class? You're an art nerd, like, yeah, just go to the art class and work on projects in there. You can do that." Well, yeah. So I started doing that. Until some idiot that really wasn't interested in doing that went in there and started causing trouble. So instead of punishing the idiot, they said, "Well, no one can do that anymore."
Right.
That's the way it always goes.
Ruin it for
everyone. Me being the school-spirited person that I was at the time, I'm sitting there on the north end of the bleachers, maybe 3-4 rows up, right next to the doors that led out of the gymnasium. And I'm sitting there, and the whole thing is going, and my head is just pounding. And then the band blaring like that. Then they play the school song. And I'm sitting there, and I never got in trouble in school. I just didn't do any of that kind of stuff. But I'm sitting there, and everyone stands up on the side, and I happen to and I hear this, "Hey!" And I look over, and there's the principal standing at the bleachers, and he looks at me, and he takes his thumb and says, "Stand up!" And I bellowed as loud as I could, "When you play the national anthem, I will stand up."
Right.
And the look on his face was like, whoa, he's never done anything like that before.
Right.
And from that point on, I skipped out of school every time they had a pep session. At the end of the day, when they 20 minutes before the end of school, I was gone.
Right.
And I never did anything like that. That was the only time I'd ever done anything like that. And it was all because some idiot said, "Oh, I'm going to be an idiot and ruin it for everybody." Yeah. And I took it seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to college for commercial art. That's what my career was.
Yeah.
So it's like, so anybody out there who's had a similar experience,
yeah, right,
where you did something you're passionate about and somebody ruins it for you,
yeah, right,
leave me a note.
Well, my story on that is in high school it was my senior year, and they called me into the counselor's office, and I went in there, and both counselors are there, the girls and the boys. And I went in and I sat down and I said, "What's this all about?" And the guy told me, he said, "Well, we called you in not to really get on you too much, but you've got enough credits to graduate from high school right now, but we think you can do better. We think you should knuckle down." And I looked at them and I said, "No, wait a minute. Didn't you just tell me I've got enough credits to graduate?" "Oh yeah, you got plenty." I said, "Then I'm out of here." And I got up and left.
Right.
Why sit there and listen to their stuff?
What was the whole point?
I don't know. And I told Dad,
"You're doing good, but we want you to do better."
And when I told my dad that, he goes, "Good for you."
Right.
He says, "You didn't have to sit there through that."
Right.
And I didn't.
Right.
And I'm not really what you'd call
a rebel.
A rebel.
Yeah. I'm not either.
That big of a rebel.
But
that just ticked me off.
Yeah. But and I guess that's what it did to me too. It's like you got to be kidding me.
Right.
How is that? Well, the other thing that was interesting was when I was in high school, we'd have convocations. They'd have people come and perform and do things like that. And when I was an 11th grader, I was a junior. The senior class got really rowdy during one of these convos, and they were even throwing paper wads up at the stage like that.
I remember you talking about that.
So what did they do? And to punish that senior class, well, we're not going to have as many convocations next year. And the juniors are going to think, "No, let me get this straight. You're punishing us for something that they did.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not going to be here."
Yeah, right.
That makes a lot of sense. Instead of telling the junior class, "Okay, we're not going to have what happened last year. If that happens again, then we're not doing it."
Well,
right.
No. When I was a senior, we had a senior lounge.
Yeah.
Right.
And they got rid of that before I became a senior.
Oh, I couldn't believe that they actually just have a senior lounge.
It had a pop machine in it.
Had a pop machine, and it had a little area you could take a nap.
Yeah, they had a couple of couches in there.
It was really neat.
Mm-hmm.
And they ruined it. They started smoking in there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, that's great. That's wonderful."
The only neat thing I can remember is, I had to take summer school a couple times. But the neat thing about summer school is I had a teacher, her name was Pat Zell. And she would give us, at the time, it was a new thing. I don't know if it was a new thing or not, but it was new to me. They had those Jelly Bellies that had, instead of your typical jelly bean, it had the, fruit punch flavor, or, they didn't have popcorn or anything like they do now, but, they had root beer and all these other flavors. So she would give each class, or student, like a handful,
That's cool.
maybe like 3 or 4. And then there was a pop machine outside the school by the recess area.
Yeah.
So I'd get me a big bottle of Mountain Dew, glass bottle of Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And, chew down my jelly beans and drink my pop during our recess for summer school. So
hey, that's cool. Yeah. I had driver's ed in the summer.
I did.
And that was great because instead of compressing 3 drivers in a car with a teacher and trying to squeeze it into 50 minutes, we had 3 hours.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so an hour per driver. And we drove, drove to Peru, we drove to Marion. We drove, so we got highway experience.
I drove to Warsaw.
Right. Yeah, we had a highway experience and everything. It was great.
Yeah. Yep.
I already knew how to drive.
But the thing that got me, the one thing that got me is...
The guy who owned a car at 15 years old driving it anywhere he wanted to.
I guess I paid attention to Dad when he drove and I'd ride with him.
Right.
I remember it was a 4-way stop. I even remember where it was at. It won't mean anything to anybody who's watching this, but it was the intersection of Wabash Street and Harrison Avenue. And I was heading east on Harrison Avenue crossing, and it's a 4-way stop. Well, I stopped and I looked both ways before I went, and the guy said, "You don't have to look, it's a 4-way stop." So I channeled Dad. I said, "Well, just because I know it's a 4-way stop doesn't mean they do."
Yeah.
And all I could think is like, why is this guy teaching driver's ed if he's going to say something like that?
Right.
Because even as a kid, I'd be in a car and I'd be there, and Dad would say, "Hey, you see me?" I used to go buzzing right through a stop sign.
Yeah.
And that's like,
you always want to stop.
It's
I take off before when the light turns green at a major intersection.
I look.
And make sure.
Well, especially on the bypass, because we've had people get killed before.
Oh, yeah.
Heck yeah.
Especially if semis blow that light right there at the Walmart.
And you can't really blame the semis because if they're booking along at 55 miles an hour and it's like yellow red. It's
right.
You don't bring an 18-wheeler to you could cause an accident.
I'm a truck driver. I know.
Yeah, you
don't
know that.
stop an 80,000-pound vehicle at the drop of an act.
No, it's like just don't do that.
It's crazy.
But
at the same time, you shouldn't be coming flying up on.
Well, guys, what do you think? Do you think we've been long enough? It's been 47.
It's been 47 minutes. Yeah,
I think we could probably. We've been rattling on about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So
that'll give you a taste of what we're going to be like.
And what I want to do is get this one up and loaded and put it up, see how it does, and then we'll go from that.
Yeah.
But I think we should follow up with another one.
Yeah, I think so.
Fine.
And what I think might be a good idea is limit ourselves to like 1 or 2 topics.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is just a get started. Let them know what we're going to talk about.
Get an idea of who we are and what we are.
Okay, so we're going to stop it right here, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Okay, this guy right here. This is John Bradley. He's the owner of this whole thing.
Right.
So
and
give it a like if you like it, and hit subscribe. I hope you do. And we got more coming. Yeah. So with that, we'll say goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.